You're listening to the Outfitter Pros Podcast, the show for outdoor enthusiasts by outdoor enthusiasts. On the show, we speak with outfitter owners and outdoor professionals across North America and hear their stories of turning their passion into a profession. Whether you've been in the outdoor industry for years, are thinking of pursuing your own passion as a profession, or simply want to discover new outfitters for your next adventure, this is the show for you. On today's episode, we get to speak to Zach Collier. He is the founder, the owner of Northwest Rafting Company, and let me tell you, this episode is phenomenal. From starting as a river guide to working his way up the trip leader and river manager to now being an owner and founder of a rafting company, Zach has tons of wisdom, tons of insight into exactly what it takes to find success in running an outfitter business. So we talk about marketing, we talk about things that are hard and challenges along the way. I am sure that you are going to love this episode. So without further ado, let's dive in and hear what Zach has to say about his story. Well, Zach, man, welcome to the Outfitter Pros podcast. I'm super pumped for our conversation today and to have you on the show today. And how you doing, man?
Doing good. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, this is, we just connected a couple of days ago and this got brought up about doing the podcast. So I got to hear your story kind of already, a little bit of it, and we're going to dive a little bit more into that today. And I'm excited for the wealth of wisdom and knowledge and experience that you have to offer. You may not feel that about yourself, but I think you have a ton of good things that our listeners are just going to really love. So kind of how I start these shows out, right? I obviously want to talk about what you're doing now, but I want to talk to like, how did you even get to that point, right? So like, man, did you grow up in an adventure family? Like what was your experience like outdoors when you were a kid?
Well, my dad worked for the Boy Scouts, so I was obviously a Boy Scout. And, the Boy Scouts is a lot of like camping, camporees, tying knots, starting fires. And my dad would take me to camps all the time. I would sleep on picnic tables and just do like Boy Scout stuff. So I did a lot of that. And that led me to Boy Scout camps, right? Spend the summer working at camps. And through those camps, I discovered like backpacking and eventually kayaking at one of them. And this wasn't until I was in college. Like I didn't grow up doing adventure stuff. It was just more like out like camping, like Boy Scout stuff. But once I discovered kayaking, rock climbing, that kind of stuff, I sort of took to it, and especially kayaking and skiing, of course, but kayaking was amazing to me. And I went as much as I could. I got obsessed with kayaking, and eventually that led me to becoming a guide because I wanted to be closer to rivers so I could kayak more. I'm like, how do I kayak more? Well, I could go be a river guide and then after work go paddle. So that's kind of how I got into boating and guiding in particular.
Man. So did you grow up? You're in the Pacific Northwest. You're in Oregon. So is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Reno.
Okay.
So Reno, Nevada. And then went to college in California and then learned how to do all the stuff in the Sierras and learned to kayak on the American River in California.
Wow. It's interesting because like I'm the opposite. So like I started out being a raft guide and then I got into hard boating. And so it's like, and that seems normal for most guys that push rubber.
Yeah.
It's like, let's try to do some hard boating and see even though as much as we cuss the hard boaters when we're trying to go down the river,
and vice versa. And when you're kayaking, you're cussing like the raft guides too.
Yep. Right. No, it goes both ways. That's for sure. But so like you grew up doing the Boy Scout thing, getting into kayaking and like wanting to do this as much as you can. So like, where was the first river that you guided on?
The American.
You said it was the American. Now, how long did you spend on the American River?
I did one season. I only planned to do one season. I was in grad school at that point, planned to be a teacher, was excited about being a teacher, and like, I'll just do this guide thing for a season, and then fell in love with the Tuolumne River. I went and kayaked at Tuolumne. I then took some friends down the Tuolumne on a raft trip, and I said, if I could guide this river, I'll keep guiding. This river is amazing. And applied to get a job as a raft guide on the Tuolumne. And they don't hire second-year guides there. It's just a thing that doesn't happen. But I got super lucky. This one company was kind of desperate. And they're like, hey, if you can hang, like you have to prove yourself, we'll give you a chance. And I did everything I could to get that job because it's a river that I love. And I spent 7 seasons there. Like I that's the place I like. I became a raft guide. I did the one season on American just to do the raft guide thing, but that's where I said this is a thing I love doing. And at some point made a decision. I was kayaking a lot, the Tuolumne is a great place to river guide because Cherry Creek is right there. So on your days off, you can kayak this amazing class
Wow.
five run. And so I was starting to go down this like hardcore kayaking path and this more like guiding path. And at some point, I made a conscious decision to really focus on guiding. Like I
Mm.
love the profession of guiding. So I still kayak, but I didn't like give everything up to go paddle hard stuff all the time. I really made sacrifices to go guide more places and to really focus on that profession of river guiding.
Wow. That's man, it's so funny because like when I found kayaking when I was in my early 20s, yeah,
Uh,
late teens, early 20s. And that's I just wanted to be a professional kayaker, you know? Like I just this is all I want to do. Like I wanted to do that more than
yeah.
the guiding, just because I loved only having to worry about me in the boat and not
Hmm.
anybody else. I mean, other than the group you're paddling with, of course. But man, that was I had kids real young too, so I got. Are you familiar with any like Southeast rivers?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was on the Green River Narrows,
Hmm.
and I was going down rapid transit, and a storm had came, and I just had my second son like 3 months before this, and a
Yeah.
storm came and knocked over a tree to the entrance of rapid transit. And you like there's a boulder and then there's this log, and you had to do this like wheelchair move in between the boulder and the tree. And I missed my left side stroke, and it pushed me into this like micro eddy behind this boulder, looking up at a 45-degree like water slide here, and this like undercut behind me. And I'm like, how the crap am I going to get out of this? Like, what do I
Yeah.
do? And I was like, the only thing I can do is to try to ferry across and then make my way down. But as soon as I went in the current, dude, it flipped me and I got pushed up into this undercut, and it was just like black. And I'm just like, I'm dead, man. This is it. I'm gonna die. And I saw green water. I rolled, and my friends are all like white faced, and they're like, bro, you were gone. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I've kayaked one time. That was 10 years ago. I've kayaked once since then. I've
Really?
rafted again. I've rafted several times, but I've not gotten in a boat. Life got in the way. I have
Yeah.
3 kids now, and it just got to the point where it's like I don't have time to do it as much as I used to.
Yeah.
So now it's my kids are at ages where it's like I'm gonna buy a raft next year, and we're just gonna start
Mhm.
rafting more versus the kayaking. But
Yeah.
I still love it, and I always wanted to be Pat Keller. That's who I wanted to be. I just wanted to be running big class 5 creeks and doing drops, and just wasn't. And I did some of it, but it just wasn't for me in the long run.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I remember kayaking and looking at a rapid thinking if my main focus in life was kayaking, I would have to run this rapid over and over and over to prove my value. And there's some rapids out there that are messed up. And so there's some that you might want to do once, but to like when you're a professional kayaker or a high level kayaker, you are on a regular basis running really big rapids.
yeah,
And once I had that realization that I would have to, if I wanted to paddle at that level, run really big things, the risk just got to me. And I said, I want to, I think guiding's a great way to spend time outside
yep,
and it has its own challenges.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
still kayak all the time, but mainly like I stick to class four. Like I
yeah.
rarely push it anymore.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. I think if I were to get back into it, like as my kids get older, I would just want to go do some like play boating, and maybe we'll
Yeah.
do some class 3 stuff, like, but just real chill. I don't need to
Yep.
prove myself, you know. I don't need to do that anymore. But man, that's cool. So now let's talk about now. Where is the Tuolumne River? I'm
It's
not
near
familiar.
Yosemite. It's
Okay,
in the
cool.
Sierras, so it's near Yosemite. It flows, it starts in Yosemite, and the section that gets rafted is outside the park. And so it's in the Central Valley, California, centrally located near the Bay Area.
Yeah. So you did that for 7 years.
Mhm.
You guided there for 7 years. I mean, what was that transition like? Because obviously you came to where you're at now. Like, how did you make that transition from leaving the river that you loved to seeking out a new place?
Well, then the company I worked for, Echo, I then had a chance to go do a middle fork of the salmon trip while I was guiding the Tuolumne and went there and I fell in love with that then too. I was like, oh, the Tuolumne is really cool. but I love the 6 day trip, the
Mhm.
longer length. The Middle Fork, there's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of challenge to it that I really like. There's like fires and landslides and there's adversity in the Tuolumne too, but I kind of enjoy the adversity of it. And I fell in love with that longer length of trip. And so I slowly transitioned from the Tuolumne to go work in Idaho on the Middle Fork of the Salmon.
Wow. Man, that's something that, that's in depth, man. That's a comprehensive trip to go out there and spend a few days. Like people are on the Grand Canyon for weeks, but like this is
Yeah.
like more manageable, I think, for like average tourists, right? That is like, we can take a week off and go do
Yeah,
a rafting
yeah.
trip. That's pretty easy. Like 30 days, a little bit more difficult, but that's something. And again, I've never, outside of the Arkansas River in Colorado, where I first started guiding,
Yeah.
I've never been west of that. So it's like I don't know a lot of these big, wild western rivers. Talk to me a little bit about the where you're rafting out now on the Rogue. And I mean, what is the makeup of this river? Is it a wild and scenic river? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, so the river I was talking about just now was the Middle Fork of the Salmon. The
Oh,
Rogue is
sorry,
another river
sorry.
that I guided. Like the company Echo I ran did the Rogue too. And my business now runs both the Rogue and the Middle Fork.
Right, right.
So like I'm the rivers I do often. Both of them, the Rogue and the Middle Fork of the Salmon, are two of the original 8 wild and scenic rivers.
Oh yeah.
So they're on that original list. They're that special, and they both flow through wilderness.
Mm,
The Rogue flows through the Wild Rogue Wilderness. The Middle Fork flows through the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness. So they're highly protected, highly coveted places.
good.
And the Middle Fork's amazing. It's 100 miles. It's continuous the whole way. There's no flat spots. There's great fishing. There's hot springs, epic scenery. To me, it's like the perfect trip.
Man.
And I like I think I'm drawn to challenges as a person. And so as a guide, it's a hard place to work because you don't really have a day off all summer. And because the trips are just back to back to back. And there's just logistically challenging. The rapids are hard, especially at high water. The water level changes all summer. It's not dam controlled. So every week is different. I just love the challenge of the Middle Fork. And it's a place I really kind of fell in love with after I left the Tuolumne.
Man, yeah. And you're gaining all this experience, right? Because every river is
Yeah.
different and there's different skill sets that you need to
Yep.
acquire and learn as a guide. And you're getting all of this experience on the Tuolumne, on the American River, on this Middle Fork of the Salmon. Like you're
Yep.
just racking up, man, all of these knowledge points and all of these, skill
I mean,
sets.
that speaks to me. I because that's how I always was. When I was in California, I worked as many rivers as I could. If I
Mm.
could get a day off, I worked for a different company. I worked on the East Carson and the Middle Fork, North Fork American, um, Merced, the Stanislaus. Like I would work as many different rivers as I could. And even like next week, I'm headed to Iceland to go hang out with a buddy who runs a company just to like learn more from him. And
Yeah.
so like even now, I'll go. Last year, I wrote a trip for another company on the Tuolumne just to like see how other companies are running things. So like I'm somebody who loves learning and like seeing a bunch of different things. So for me, varied experience is what I'm all about as a
Yeah.
guide.
Yeah. And I love that. I think that that's one of the biggest things that kind of stood out to me when I was guiding was you have different types of guides, right? Like there's people that are there just to, and they're about the trip that day. They're about the kind
Yeah.
of the guide lifestyle. But then you have another set of guides that are like the professional guides, right? And you can tell a difference between two. Like,
Yeah.
right, there's like these are the guys that are just
It's really
going and
obvious.
partying, and these
Yeah.
are the guys that this is their career. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that that's the big shift is like this is a career, not just a summer job. This is what I want to do the rest of my life. And I always wanted to be that person, the latter, right? This is what I
Yeah.
want to do for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, life got in the way, and I'm
Yeah.
not doing that for the rest of my life, although I still get to kind of work in that realm. But
Yeah.
man, I think it just makes such a big difference to be that professional. And in your experience, even as you're growing as a guide, going from rookie, I'm sure you went from rookie, now you're your trip leader, you're
Mhm.
working your way up, even in leadership within the structure of the organizations that you worked for. Talk a little bit about how that even kind of led you to where you're at now, like coming into the company that you have now because
Yeah.
you were a guide there first, right?
Yeah, I mean, the company I worked for was Echo,
Okay.
and it's a complicated story. I don't think we should get into because it's long
Sure, sure.
about how I went from running Echo to starting my own business, and eventually I have my own business now, which is Northwest Rafting Company.
Yeah,
But it's basically an extension of Echo, and it's a really complicated story.
sure.
But I guided the American for a year, went to the Tuolumne, guided there, like loved it. They hired me to be the manager my second year on the Tuolumne. So the next seasons I was there, next 6 seasons I was a manager. Then went to Idaho as a guide, moved up to be the sweet boat driver, which is this unique job of driving this like big gear boat. It's hard. It's a hard job to get.
Mm,
I eventually got that job and then became the manager of Idaho. And sometimes becoming the manager is just because you're the person who's willing to do it. Like
sure.
being a river manager is not a super sought after job, but on the Tuolumne, I figured out how to be a manager and guide every trip. And so I could do both. I didn't mind the work. I liked the challenge. In Idaho, I could still manage. It was really hard in Idaho, but go on all the trips.
Mm,
Uh, and at some point, the owners of Echo said, "Hey, Zach, we're going to retire soon. We want to have you work for us for a couple of years with us. And then when we retire, you can run the business." So uh, they found me. Like this wasn't me like saying a lot of guides would sit around the campfire and say, "We're going to start our own company someday and I want to be an outfitter someday." Like it's like a thing we talk about or things we like discuss. I'm sure I talked about it, but it's really hard to make happen.
mm,
And I was very lucky that like two of the best outfitters in the history of outfitting allowed me to work with them for 2 years. They taught me how to do a good job
mm.
and then gave me their business to sort of experiment with. Like I got to run their business before starting mine. It was a
Wow.
really lucky undertaking. And when I started mine, they were involved in mine in the beginning. So I ran theirs while I started mine at the same time. And then over the 5 years, they sold the rest of their business off. And I built up Northwest Rafting Company to be what it is today. But it
Wow.
was it was it was an interesting path. And it's not something where I don't think I could have said, I want to be an outfitter and made it happen.
Yeah,
Because it required a lot of luck on my part.
sure.
And there's very, very few outfitting businesses out there right now that are owned by people that were guides who figured out how to finance it on their own.
Mm,
Like I only know of one other one.
yeah,
Usually there's like there's wealth involved. Some
sure.
sort of like somebody was a guide and they found some source of wealth through like a customer who really likes them or a parent, or they were maybe like had some job, they made a bunch of money in the past and they just have it. But outfitting businesses are so expensive to buy because they're cool businesses. Like if they
Yeah,
weren't cool, they'd be cheap,
right.
right? But because it's a cool job or perceived as a cool job, they're pretty expensive. And so it's pretty rare for somebody to like go from guide to owner. And my path was because I had this opportunity to work with Dick and Joe, the owners of Echo, and they helped me build a path towards that. It was really
Mm,
hard,
yeah,
but I had that in my back pocket. Without that, if I just said I want to own a rafting company, I couldn't have done it unless I had like again wealth behind me, which I didn't
yeah,
have.
yeah. So and I'm sure a lot of the people that I speak to, what you just said with Dick and Joe
Yeah,
is a pivotal part of their experience to becoming a successful outfitter owner is they had someone who like invested in them, right? They had someone that
yeah,
came alongside of them and taught them what it takes. Because as a guide, even as a river manager, it's like you get to see some integral parts of the business, but you don't get to see all
yeah,
of it. And so, how
yeah.
was that experience for you? How important was that experience for you to launching you into running as the successful outfitter that you do today?
I don't quite understand the question. How important was being a river manager to
No,
running an outfitting business?
how important was it to have the owners, Dick and
Oh,
Joe,
Dick and Joe.
coming alongside of you to help equip
Yeah, I
you for that?
mean, absolutely crucial for me.
Mm,
Um, it's because like when you're a guide, becoming a trip leader is a different skill set. All
yeah,
of a sudden you're like, oh, I have to communicate with guests and to have to manage guides at the same time. It's a hard job. And then going to become a river manager is an entirely different set of skills. Like a lot of times people hire the best guy to be a river manager and they
yeah,
suck at it because it's two different skill sets.
right.
And so a lot of river managing is like the person who goes to the dump, or the person who does Excel spreadsheets, or the person who can talk to the owners respectfully, and like, and also handle guides' special needs and requests, and
Yeah.
like say no to some of them, but do the ones you can. And then owning a company or managing a company is a whole other skill set. These are all like guide, trip leader, river manager, outfitter are all different jobs. As a manager outfitter, you have like insurance and uh, taxes and buying equipment and just like all these things that uh, you don't learn about being a river manager. And
Right.
so it's almost like a whole different job. And so for me, having Dick and Joe help me bridge that gap and say, hey, Zach, here are the 14 things. And Joe wrote 14 things on a piece of paper for me once. These are the 14 things you do. It was nice to have that list. And then he's like, we're going to once a month work on mastering one of these things.
Wow.
And like insurance is really hard. It seems like you just get insurance, but something like insurance, like diving in and figuring it out and trying not to overspend and getting the right insurance is a whole task that you have to either learn on your own or have somebody kind of hold your hand and show you how to do it.
Yeah. 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 That's good, man. Just having a framework, right? A framework for success that's
Mm-hmm.
going to help you to the best of your ability. Now we know there's going to be some luck involved for sure, but there's going to be a lot
Yep.
more intention and strategy that goes into how do we do these things well, right? And one thing, and I want to kind of shift even into how
Yeah.
that experience and starting Northwest Rafting Company now is like. What were some of those early challenges when you first started your business, coming from a wealth of experience in the past, but to now launching your own business? What were some
Mhm.
of those initial kind of struggles and challenges you had to overcome?
It's selling trips. Like it's all about selling trips. And Dick and Joe gave me so much advice. I could just do a whole episode on Dick and Joe advice. Um, and Dick said, if you sell trips, everything else falls into place. And it's really true. Like a lot of problems can get solved with money.
Mm,
And if you sell trips, guides are busy, so they're happy. Uh, you make money to cover expenses. If you don't sell trips, like it all falls apart.
yeah.
Like you're not a business if you don't sell trips. And you can barely survive and like, barely pay the bills, or you can thrive and be able to buy new trucks and new equipment and pay guides really well. And so that advice Dick said, he says again, like if you sell trips, everything falls into place,
Mm,
rang in my head. And when we're getting started, it's all about selling trips. It is not easy. I think a lot of guides are like, oh, you just like turn your lights on and have a website and people magically come. And it is not like that. It is really hard to fill trips. And
yeah.
so that was, it took me a while when I got started to actually fill trips.
Yeah. And so when did you start your business?
2009.
2009. Yeah. So 2009, I mean, things have changed a lot since then, at least as we talk about marketing, right? Of how do we
Yep.
how do we sell trips, right? That's marketing. You have to market your business. So
Yeah.
what in 2009, I mean, what were some of those things that you were doing to market trips and how has that even changed today?
So let's go back to 2004 when I
Okay.
started running Echo, like 2004, 2005. Uh, Back then, there was a transition to like the internet. Back in 2004, we were still sending brochures, we were still sending
Yeah.
postcards, and then SEO was a thing, like get on the search engines, and paid marketing, paid ads were just coming up. And so Echo had a really bad internet presence. And so I obsessed on SEO and just like how to get people to your website and how to convert people from your website to sales in that time frame, like 2004 to 2008 for me. That was 100% like I was obsessed with. And I learned I know everything you know about SEO circa 2007.
Yeah.
Like I could be a pay, that could be my job. I could be like the new Paul
Yeah.
if it was 2007, right? And it's changed since then. So it's not, I'm sure I'd be terrible at it now, but like back then I could hand code websites. I had to learn everything. So like I taught myself how to write HTML. I taught
Wow.
myself like some PHP so I could do WordPress stuff. Like I learned how to do the back end stuff. I also learned a lot about design to make things look beautiful, a lot about how to like convert people by like having the buy now button in the right place and all those things. and then all about the SEO. Well, around 2009-ish, when I started my company, it sort of shifted more, not more towards, but started to shift towards social media to where like Facebook was like a thing
Yeah.
back then, and Twitter, and that was even pre-Instagram. And when I was running Echo, I was running two businesses simultaneously, Echo and then my company, which was starting. I decided to run Echo on a traditional marketing plan. Like, let's just keep doing, send a few mailers. Let's just keep plugging the website, keep working on SEO, keep building links to have like a big link profile. I said, let's build Northwest on social media because I had no money.
Yeah.
I can't afford to like, I was still working on SEO as well, but SEO takes time to build. I couldn't just start a business and all of a sudden rank well for things.
Yeah.
Let's go all in on social media. And so I really focused on social media, and we after a couple of years started doing really well with that.
Mm.
Like that actually we were and a lot of people, I would go to conferences and people would say, how does Facebook sell trips? We don't believe Facebook sells trips. And I learned that like your one post on Facebook does not sell trips,
Yeah, it's good.
but the relationship building you do
Yeah.
by hitting people different ways. You hit them on Facebook, you hit them on Twitter, maybe. I don't really use Twitter, but that's a way you could hit them.
Sure.
Hit them on LinkedIn. Maybe they see you on a website they go to. You need to hit people like three or four different ways. And Facebook was an easy way to get in front of people and develop relationships with them and
Yeah.
share what you believe. And so we continue to tell our story through social media for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and found that that really worked. And it was like driving people to do trips with us. And so I got to do a case study between like traditional marketing and social media marketing, which is
Yeah.
really cool. And then I don't know, 2015, I think, is when I bought the last piece of Echo. We had a choice. I could be Northwest or it could be Echo. I could be either one because I own both brands. Echo was just like at that point 40-year-old brand. And I talked to the guides about it, like, what would you guys want to do? And they really bought into the Northwest brand.
Mm.
And even they bought in, I think, because of the social media. They really believed in a lot of the stuff that we were doing and the communication that we were doing. And so I really felt like back then social media worked, and it still works now for sure.
Yeah.
But that was, I think, the transition period, that 2008 to 2014, 15 time period.
Man, and so many outfitter owners that I speak with, right? Or I think you are in definitely the minority of like, I want to learn how to do all these things, and I think that that makes a big difference, right? Because it's like, man, if you take the time, there's two ways of doing this. You can
Mhm.
pay to shortcut things. You hire
Mhm.
people to do it for you, or you can invest sweat equity, right, into this, invest
Yeah.
time into it, and learn how to do it yourself. And a similar story to me of how I learned how to do marketing in the first place. I just studied it and I learned.
Yeah.
I spent thousands of dollars on courses and thousands of hours on YouTube and just the computer learning and exploring and researching these things.
Yep.
And so, and it's paid off for you. So,
Well, I had to do it. I had
yeah,
no choice. Like
right.
I don't have money. So
Yep.
like if I had like $1 million in the bank, I would probably much rather hire somebody to do the market. Like, hey, do
Yep.
my marketing for me. I'm gonna go on vacation. I'm gonna go skiing more. I don't
Yep.
want to stay up till 3 in the morning learning how to like do right code HTML.
Yep.
I had no choice. If I wanted to succeed in this business, I had to.
Mm,
I
yeah.
I I just not I don't think I wanted to learn that stuff. Like right
Yeah.
now, I don't want to learn marketing, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I'm at a point in my life where I put so much energy into it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be doing marketing and learning about it. Now, I feel like a recession's coming, so I'm starting to like listen to podcasts again, dive into what helps SEO right now. I'm starting to put my head back into it because I'm worried about bookings dropping, but it's not something I want to do.
Right.
It's just
Right.
out of necessity.
Yeah. And trial by fire, right? You just have
Yeah.
to put your feet to the ground and go. And I think
Yeah.
that that's just that grit, right? That's so much of, I think, what makes or breaks a business is the passion for something, right? The passion for a dream, which
Mhm.
is what this whole kind of show is about, right? What is the journey of turning your passion into your profession look like? And for you, it looked like a lot of long nights studying about shit you didn't want to read. and that you didn't want to have to learn, but you did because you had passion for what could be and what would be if you just put in the time to do it. And I think
Yeah.
that's a major thing that I think people need to understand, right? Is like if you're not passionate about growing and really maintaining an outfitter business, then it's not going to work. At some point, it will fizzle out because you're going to get tired of it and you're going to say, why am I doing this? And you're going to give
Mhm.
up. I experienced that with an axe throwing business that I started in 2018. It was great. I was like, I like to drink beer and I like to throw axes. I guess I've
Yeah.
never thrown an axe, but it sounds like a good business opportunity. But I
Mhm.
wasn't passionate about it. And I even had a
Huh.
mentor say, "Hey, are you passionate about this?" I'm like, "That's a
Hmm.
good business idea." And ask me if I'm still doing axe throwing. No, I'm not.
Wait,
So,
do you have one of those places where people go to, like it's a physical establishment and you can rent
so
an axe throwing lane and throw axes and drink beer at the same time?
we did. We started out as a mobile axe throwing because there was
Wow.
no other axe throwing venue within a
Hmm.
200-mile radius, and I had all these
Uh-huh.
dreams of franchising and
Yeah.
expansion, and so we didn't. There was no competition, so we didn't have to have a brick and mortar immediately. We didn't know if it would work, so we
Yeah.
partnered with breweries, and we would go do pop-up events at breweries
That's
until
fun.
one brewery was like, "This is the best crowd I've ever had on a Monday night. Do you want to come every night and just be here?" And we were like, yeah, let's do it. So we built out our axe throwing in kind of their warehouse area. And so it was cool, man. It was really fun, but I wasn't passionate about it. Met
Hmm.
a lot of good people, made a lot of good friends, but
Man, I think I could get passionate about that. That sounds amazing to me. I mean,
yeah,
I have a set of throwing knives right here, just so you
yeah,
know. Like I'm into throwing sharp things. I was a Boy Scout. I'm into throwing sharp things at wood. So like that could be my next career.
dude. Hey, I can tell you how it all works and what you need to do to
Yeah.
get there and set it up. So but passion, man, that's the thing that needs to drive people forward, right? So in fact, we talked about kind of, just the social media and just the investment, your time
Yeah.
investment into to marketing. As you were doing those things, I kind of want to even dive a little deeper into the social media side of it. You talked
Mhm.
about SEO. Obviously, we know that SEO works and we have to have a
Yeah.
presence on Google, but today, what's your strategy for your social media? Like, how are you really trying to get your messaging across to people? Or like what's been like the golden nugget of like, man, this really works well, and we see a lot of just good kind of return on this.
I would say right now my marketing strategy is summed up in like, let's just go be awesome and not afraid to talk about it.
Mm,
That's right now. Because we're a mature business. Like our bookings are good. And so for me right now, and we do multi-day trips. And so people, it's not like a day trip where you like go to Colorado and you do a day trip and you may never go to Colorado again. Like people, we're the destination. And so if people have a really good trip with us, they'll come back on the same trip or a different trip with us. They'll come back for that same destination. And people
mm,
book with us every year sometimes, every year, every third year, every 4 years. But we're now at a point where we depend on repeat business. And
yeah.
so if I had a strategy now, it would be let's just keep sharing the awesome stuff we're doing.
Mm,
And for us, those things are like running great trips, having great guides. We teach a lot of courses, so demonstrating that we're really good guides. We're so good that we teach others, and
wow.
so keep like sharing those things. Like it's a lot of brand building. Let's just remind people that we're awesome
Yeah.
and that we're continuing on this path. So, and that's not even a strategy. I mean, that is a strategy. That's what we're doing. But I don't do enough social media these days. Like I've been kind of lax. I feel sometimes like I'm Rocky and Rocky 3. Like we've had a good run and I'm kind of just hanging out, going on podcasts and having fun and not like I'm not buckling down like I should be. And like some new company is going to come like club relaying me
Mm,
and I'm going to be like, "Oh, I got to buckle down again."
yeah.
And so I kind of need to get whooped upside the head to get motivated again to have a social media strategy. Maybe the recession is my club relaying, but I've been kind of uh, not that good at marketing the past year or two. We've been really dependent on like people coming back. And
Yeah.
COVID was unique. COVID,
Yeah.
COVID actually like we didn't market then either. So I kind of lost the like, I don't know, the energy to do it. But if I was to give advice to like a new young outfitter, I would say um, do social media, but don't like do it in the way that's like, here's a photo of us, click the link below the book.
Right.
Or like there not no one post is going to get somebody to book.
Nope.
Like you need to become an expert, and you're not just marketing to customers, you're marketing to your guides who are learning more about you as a business. You're marketing to other river guides who are followers of you. If somebody does a trip on, like, let's say the Ocoee, and somebody on the boat asks, what's an overnight trip I should do? You want them to say, go do the Middle Fork of the Salmon with Northwest Rafting Company.
Yeah.
They may have never met us, but if they follow us and they believe in what we're doing, like another guide might sell the trip to us.
Mm.
Or you're marketing to other raft company owners. Again, like somebody calls the owners like, hey, I've always wanted to do an overnight trip. Who should I go with? If other people, even in the industry, understand your brand, they'll sell the trip for you. So
Mm.
I wouldn't think of social media as like selling. You post and a customer sees it and they book. You're just sharing what you're doing,
Yeah.
and you need to have repeated hits.
Yeah.
And back when we were doing the mailing flyers thing, back when that was a thing, mailing catalogs, and it's some people still do it, and I'm sure it works. But I remember going to an American Outdoor show, and somebody spoke about like buying targeted mailing lists,
Mm.
and it was really expensive. You could buy a mailing list of people who were like 50 to 70 years old, who like cycling, who you can target on Facebook right now.
Yep.
You could buy that list, and it was too expensive for one outfitter to buy. So five of us went in to do it together. We bought a list and we split it into fifths, and each of us got 1/5 of this expensive list. And I mailed to the list and got no response,
Mm.
like zero. And so a year later at American Outdoors, I went to the people who presented. I said, that sucked. That didn't work. And they're like, how many times did you mail? I said, one. And they're like, no,
Mm.
no, no, one doesn't work. You need to hit them 3 times.
Yeah.
But we couldn't afford to. Like, it was so expensive to buy the list, and mailing is expensive. Like, you have to design it, print it, put postage on it. And that made me realize, like, to market to anybody, you need to hit them multiple times, ideally multiple ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's what social media is. Like, people need to see you, like somebody might see me on this podcast right now, right? And they're like, oh, Zach's a dummy, and that sucks. I lose out on that one. Or then I'd be like, huh, seems like a nice guy. He's not the worst. And then maybe they see a social media post I put up in 3 weeks. And then maybe they see us on a website somewhere, a different thing. And then their brother asks them, who should I do a Middle Fork of the Salmon trip with? That's how we sell trips.
Yeah.
That's what I believe works. It's like a lot of different things
Yeah.
and a lot of different hits. And it is branding.
Yep.
When it comes down to it, it's like you're building how people perceive you through multiple streams of communication.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And that's like we call that in the marketing side of things, we call that like an omnipresence, right? Having omni-channel marketing, meaning just multiple touch points between different channels. Because when you
Mhm.
can begin to be everywhere, when you're showing up, whether it be a postcard or a mailer in the mail, or you're on social media, or you're on another website that, like America Outdoors, which that's more for
Yeah.
outfitters in general, but directory sites, things like that. It's like you start spreading your brand everywhere, and all of a sudden it's like you're top of mind, right? You're like,
Yep.
I've been seeing these guys in different lights in different ways. And I think one thing that I love that you've not mentioned yet, we talked about it on our call the other day, kind of your shift to inwardly, right? We're going to provide the best service possible.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to focus some attention, is training my guides, training my team, really running just the best, absolute
Mhm.
best rafting trip that anyone could ever possibly have, and how that's paid some dividends for you guys. And I think what's interesting is you're talking about sharing on social media. You're talking about just like, we just need to share that we're the best. Like your investment into your team and in making them the best is actually being able to be marketed through social media now in
Yeah.
wanting to position yourself as the best. And so that's the biggest thing. And in other words, we want to show people just in business in general, maybe not just in outfitting, but just in business in general, we need to establish authority. Hey, we know what we're doing, right? And we're pretty damn good at it.
Mhm.
We need to establish trust, right? Trust with our target market that, hey, these people know what they're doing, they have authority, but I feel like I can trust them. And that's where I think like when you are able to show guides' faces and guides, connecting and talking and things like that, showing your face and talking like we're on this podcast. Well, you're not showing your face on the podcast, but on the social, on the video side of this that we're sharing,
Yeah.
you're showing your face. So it's like, how can we connect a face to a brand? Because people buy into people, not just brands, right? And I think that that's a pretty critical component.
Yeah, they do buy into people for sure. Um, I think they both work. I think
Sure.
and brand is a huge thing. Like, I think about brand a lot. It's just and it's hard to control brand. It's how people perceive you.
Right.
And so like I have a vision of a raft company brand based on what they're telling me. And then if I go kayaking and I when I go kayaking, I watch other rafting companies as much as I can. I'm always observing, like quietly, listen to the safety talks. I'm watching how the boat spacing is, how the guys are dressed. When I go kayaking, and there's a river right over by where I live, we go paddle all the time. I have my my impression of the brand is based on what I'm observing,
Yeah.
not on what they're telling me they are.
Yep.
And I think that's happening everywhere. And so, like for me, it's important that our trucks are we have nice trucks, not just beaters that are, I can afford them now. We couldn't have when I started, all I could afford were beaters,
Yeah.
but we have nice trucks that look good and that we wash them. And it's important that our guides, dress professionally and are wearing the right equipment and not swearing at the put-ins. And like our brain is controlled by how we interact with the world.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're at a point of maturity where if we have a customer base big enough now to where I don't need to like work so hard on SEO to find customers like I did when I started. I'm at a point where I need to invest in making sure our guides are great representations of our company and pay them better so we have the best guides we can and they're really happy. And that I hope will fill trips for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good, man. And I love how you even just kind of like taking us through the transition of like what growth looks like, right? Here's where we were at when we started, and here's the things we invested in and things that we really put a lot of thought and intention into. And
Yeah.
here's as we've grown, new challenges arise, right? You're having to think differently than you did before. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a business owner, right? Is that we're always having to adapt and we're always having to kind of grow with our business. And we don't ever
Yeah.
get to a point where we're just like, yep, we've arrived. It's there's always work that needs to be done, you know?
Yes.
So I think that's man, and that's a big reason that you found the success that you have. So man, I think yeah, I'm super encouraged. It makes me want to go start another rafting business again. But
Well, I mean,
I'm
they're
too
hard
old now.
businesses. I'm not sure you want to do that. They're
Yeah.
very hard businesses.
Yeah, no, I think I'll just continue to do it for fun.
Yeah.
But so man, as you had this all of this tons of experiences thinking back over the years, if
Mhm.
you could think of just maybe one, and I know that's really challenging, but like
Mhm.
what's been one experience that you've had in your business, could be on the river, could be off the river, that really stands out as just like, man, this is one of those things that I'm never going to forget for the rest of my life. And it probably wouldn't have happened if I wasn't running this business.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
Questions like this are really hard for me because
I
there's
know.
so many. Honestly, like we do trips in Bhutan, and it's this like place that to me is just dreamy and amazing.
Yeah.
And my ability to go there every year is the coolest like gift I have. And I only can do that because we have a successful business
Mm,
and that people trust us to take them around the world to this tiny country between China and India.
mm.
Like if I didn't have a successful business of people that trusted us, I couldn't go myself. And so every time I go there, it's a gift. And I'm so grateful that I get to spend time there. And it's one of the perks of running the business we run.
Yeah. Have you taken the King of Bhutan rafting yet?
No, no, no. But an interesting thing is, you can't. One of my good friends, Ugin, who actually he's our partner in Bhutan until he passed away. He was personal friends with the king, and he met the king when he was the prince, and he taught him to kayak,
Oh, that's cool.
and so he became personal friends. And once the king became the king, he wasn't allowed to kayak anymore. But when he was younger, he like did some cool stuff. He's a really interesting guy. And I guess his father, the fourth king, who's still alive, the king is the fifth king right now. The fourth king who's still alive is a big mountain biker. And so every time I go to Bhutan, I mountain bike a little bit, hoping I'll run into him. I hear that's the best way to meet the fourth king is on a mountain bike trail. So I always every year do a mountain bike trip somewhere in the hopes I'll meet him on a trail.
That'd be a wild experience,
It would
man.
be wild. It would be.
I just had some friends that came back from fly fishing in Bhutan,
Uh-huh.
and their guide took them in this section of the river, and they were like, they could see all of these fish like pulled up over here, and they were like, "Why don't we go fish for them?" And they're like, "Oh, we can't. Those are the king's fish. We can't fish for those." So it's like
Really?
that's what that was the story that was told. It
Huh.
was just like, "Ah, no,
Interesting.
we can't fish for this section. That's the king's section that he uses." So, just it's interesting, man. Interesting cultural perspectives and changes that we don't get to experience here in the States. So,
It's
and
amazing. It's so cool over there. It's
yeah,
so culturally amazing.
yeah, I'm hoping to go. I want to do a fly fishing trip to Bhutan, hopefully in the next year. I'm working on it, but
Sweet.
um, man, that's no, that's really good. Just being able to find some freedom to do cool things and have cool new experiences, like going to Bhutan to go rafting and having people that trust you to do that.
Mhm.
That's pretty amazing. Um, man, I could go on for hours talking with you, Zach. I wanna honor your time, and I want to honor the time of our guests as well,
Yeah.
or our listeners. So I always kind of like to wrap this up, and you've
Mhm.
given tons of great advice for people wanting to start an outfitter business. But if you were speaking directly to one of those people right now, and you're sitting down, and they're like, "Man, what is just like the pivotal thing that I need to know to start this business?" If you could encourage them on, if they're thinking about launching an outfitter, what would that encouragement be? What would you say to them?
I'd probably say don't do it, honestly. It's a really hard business. It's really hard. It's not, I think people perceive owning a rafting company as a very cool job and like very chill and you're just like living the dream. But if you want to do it well, it's really hard.
Mm,
I mean, um, in terms of managing river guides, it can be really hard. Um, Selling trips is really hard. Um, there's not a lot of money in it, so it's hard to you have to figure out where to put the money. Do I pay people well? Do I have good vehicles? Like it's stressful. Do I get to keep some money so I can have a good life? Like it's not always a well-paying thing. So I'd honestly be like slightly discouraging. To be honest with people, like it's really hard. It takes a lot of energy
yeah.
to pull it off. But if I was to give them advice, it would be what Dick told me. Like if you sell trips, everything falls into place.
Mm,
And the secret is you gotta learn how to sell trips. And that's just like that's the foundation. Like you have to figure out marketing. Like how are you going to fill these spots? You can't assume they just magically fill up. And once you take people, they have to have a good time.
mm.
And that's not as easy as you would think to make sure they have a good time. And so yeah, I would just repeat Dick's. My first advice would be like think about it pretty clearly. Because it sounds very romantic.
Yeah.
Um, but if people choose to do it, I would say like focus on selling trips.
Mm. That's really good, man. That's wise words from a man who's experienced a lot of things and grown a successful rafting company. So, man, I know I'm sure I can speak on behalf of the listeners that this has been a super valuable. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. Man,
Yeah, me too.
where can people find you or connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do?
The best way to connect with me is I have a YouTube channel. It's super dorky and like I'm like slightly embarrassed of it sometimes. I'm putting myself out there, but it's right. Just talking about rafting stuff. It's called Gear Garage. It's probably the thing I like. I don't know. Spend the most time on now. Not the most time in my business for sure, but like it's a fun hobby. It's probably where I spend the most of my hobby time. And so I'm always looking for subscribers. So maybe don't watch the episodes because I'd be embarrassed if you did. But if you subscribe, it make me feel really good. Or just go to our website for the company, Northwest Rafting Company, just to see the stuff that we're doing. We do a lot of classes for both guides and private boaters, and of course, do overnight trips.
Man, that's great. And as always, I'll put the links to all of those things in the show notes here. And yeah, go check out Zach and his company and his YouTube channel and subscribe to it.
Subscribe. Maybe don't watch it because it's not that good, but I'd love to have subscribers.
Oh man, that's so good. Well, Zach, man, I really just appreciate your time today, and I've really enjoyed talking
Yeah.
with you, and I'm excited that you continue to follow you along on your journey and your YouTube channel. So
Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for taking time to talk to. It's fun. It's fun to like relive all this stuff and like me
yeah,
talking about it helps me rethink about this stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I need to not be Rocky and Rocky 3. I need to buckle down. So this is a good reminder to me to like get to work. So thanks for the motivation.
yeah. Well, the good thing about Rocky 3 is that Rocky 4 happens after it, and you get to come out on top of the world. So I'm
You
just
got to
saying,
get there though.
you got to get there. It's true.
Yep.
All you have to do, Zach, is go to Russia and train in the snow. That's it. But hey, man, I appreciate it, and yeah,
Yeah,
looking forward to seeing where you go from here.
cool.
All right, take care. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Outfitter Pros podcast, do us a favor, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe. And the second thing you can do is leave us a review. This really helps us to get more traction, get more exposure on the platform that you're listening to, so we can continue to share the stories of outdoor entrepreneurs across North America and inspire the next generation to pursue their passion for their profession.